Hi, my name is Susan Doyle from Box Media. I'll be your moderator today. I would like to welcome you to Lean Construction Ireland's 16th webinar, the topic of which is optimizations in the use of digital document management for collaborative engineering design, presented by Liz Allan. If you have a question, please type it in the question box and we will consolidate and ask Liz in the second half of the webinar. If there are any questions that we don't get answered during the webinar, we will follow up by email afterwards. The agenda will be as follows: opening introduction by Gary Widger, presentation by Liz, followed by questions and answers. I will now hand you over to Gary.
Thanks, Susan. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gary Widger. I'm a board member of LCI Ireland. So this webinar is brought to you today by Lean Construction Ireland in conjunction with our media and communication partners, Box Media. I'm really looking forward to this webinar. The title is Optimizations in the Use of Digital Document Management for Collaborative Engineering Design. And our guest speaker today is Liz Allan. Now, Liz has a really interesting background. Liz is the Performance and Delivery Manager at Jacobs, where she's responsible for the delivery or for the development and implementation of performance improvement initiatives across the Jacob Ireland's operations. Liz took up this vital role in 2017, supporting Jacobs' drive for transforming the core and promoting excellence in performance throughout the organization. Liz is Six Sigma certified, which is great for us today. She has demonstrated a track record in innovative thinking and problem solving, implementing process and quality improvements with excellent organizational skills. Working in the life sciences for over 15 years, Liz joined Jacobs in 2012 from Pfizer, the global multinational formerly known as Wyatt, where she worked in Grange Castle as a process lead and has led a large number of projects executed by Jacobs during this time, including the Genzyme plant in Giel, Belgium. Liz holds a bachelor's in chemistry from the University of Birmingham and is a master's from UCD. Now I'm going to pass you over to Liz for today's presentation. So over to you, Liz.
Thanks, Gary, for that introduction, and welcome everyone to the webinar, and thanks for joining me today. So as Gary said, I am the Performance and Delivery Manager for Jacobs in life sciences across Europe. And the Performance and Delivery Department at Jacobs is responsible primarily for establishing mechanisms for standardization and continuous improvement across our line of business, and for identifying and supporting implementation of improvement projects. So the title of the presentation is a little bit wordy, I know. Optimizations in the use of digital document management for collaborative engineering design. I probably could have just called it digital document management, actually. It might have been sufficient. So in this presentation, I'll provide you with an overview of a continuous improvement project that was executed at Jacobs, in which we have applied the principles of Lean to support change within the organisation, to deliver workflow enhancements and to increase collaboration. I'll focus on the Lean principles and methodologies that we used, which are mainly value stream mapping, root cause analysis, and Kaizen, to support and justify the move towards a digital platform for a number of key-based engineering activities. So in terms of the content of the presentation, I'll first use the opportunity to share a learning moment from the recent project, before going over some background information on traditional paper-based environment. And then we'll look at some examples of process optimizations in the area of digital document management and discuss how these have been implemented on a number of key-based paper-based activities. And then we'll just finally touch on the results that the DDM has afforded. So to start off with a learning moment. I'm just going to take this opportunity to share a short story, which I feel is quite relevant to the subject of digital document management. So anybody who's worked in the pharmaceutical industry will be very aware of the high volumes of paper that the industry generates on a on a day-by-day, week-by-week basis. And this picture shows a vendor handover pack for a bioreactor skid, actually, which was delivered to a client site as part of a recent project. And in this case, the hard copy handover documentation was requested by the project in addition to an electronic copy. And this decision may have been based on tradition or the comfort factor of having a hard copy, document and what this brings. But what you can see on the picture is, quite a lot of documentation. The gross weight of the shipment exceeded 800 kilograms, and it was obviously delivered over the water in a wooden crate. And the site wasn't prepared for this huge quantity of documentation from an unloading point of view, from unpacking and storing. And I suppose the message here is that the unfortunate thing about the photograph is that the hard copies of the documentation were only required for a short period of the project duration for CQV and not beyond. And so this paper will most likely end up, if it hasn't already, in a paper recycling factory. So I just think that this is kind of something that we can all learn on as part of our roles within an engineering construction industry, to question whether hard copy documentation is necessary.
All right, I think we're having a slight problem with Liz's connection there. If you can just give her a second just to come back online, that would be great. Appreciate your patience. Thank you.
Lost audio. So where I was there, sorry, is that the work processes and systems allow the document to be processed through the factory, and these have also been traditionally paper-based. And the examples I'll discuss shortly describe how we have used lean methodologies to make improvements to eliminate or to reduce the waste that are inherent in some of the key paper-based work processes. It's well known that paper-based environments have many inefficiencies associated with them. So, for example, administration, scanning, filing, and archiving. And just interestingly, the graph that you can see on the screen shows the total amount of pages that we printed in Cork office, Jacobs Cork office during 2015 and 16, which was before Digital Document Management Initiative was introduced. And the graph shows that an average of 55,000 pages have been printed per month. We're going to come back to that image later on when I look at the improvements that have been made on that. So. Okay, we're going to look now at the tools that we used to optimize the process and digital document management. So we decided to look at some of the key paper-based workflows to look to reduce the amount of paper waste through the factory. We first chose to review a typical paper-based vendor document review process. And the process starts, and whether you can see my mouse over here, where the vendor sends in a document and ends up over here when the document is returned to the vendor. So we started by generating a value stream map, which is what you can see on the screen, which identified the key steps required to perform the overall process. The value stream map shows all of the individual steps from start to the end and includes also an analysis of the task duration as well as the overall duration. And in a way, the value stream map therefore defines the current state. So we applied Kaizen to look specifically to eliminate problems associated with the wastes that were inherent in the process. And the value stream map indicated that the non-value enhancing steps were associated with paper-based activities, which are those activities that are circled in red on the image. And these were mainly attributed to the likes of walking hard copy documentation from location to location, from desk to desk, to consolidating of comments on multiple hard copy documents, and then also scanning and printing. So I suppose the other thing that's important on this slide is the total work time duration, which is 7.5 hours, which was taken from a typical document review cycle, a simple type of document, but the overall task duration 12 days. And this pie chart represents analysis of the 7.5 hours total work time that was required to process a document. The analysis from the value stream map indicated that almost a quarter of the time taken to perform the document review was being spent on non-value added paper-based admin. And so when you add this up on an average project where there may be in the thousands of document submittals, this amount of time adds up to a significant amount of wastage. So I suppose moving on to improving this situation. When we looked at this value stream map, and we also looked at some other similar processes, and we found similar themes in that the paper-based processes were cause for non-value in the system. And so after a period of review and research into possible digital platforms, we decided to implement digital document management for document reviews internally and externally, also master document management and P&ID change control, which I'll touch on in a while. So in terms of collaborative document reviews, both internally and externally with clients or vendors can now be performed using a digital platform, and this replaces the traditional hard copy document review. Reviewers of the document can access the document by a secure cloud session and review and comment on the document simultaneously and actually in real time. And we found that this assists with collaborative engineering review and multi-office execution, and also has assisted with decreasing the time cycle of root documents. It's no longer necessary to pass the document from person to person. Comments are now fully legible, and because the review is based on a single master document, it's easier to consolidate comments at the end of the review period. And the system that we use provides full traceability of comments and an easy reporting mechanism, which also confirms the status of the document review. So use of the electronic platform has also provided us with better control over submittals, because now the documents are always existing on the cloud rather than on perhaps someone's desk. Okay, so I touched earlier on that we also have moved towards a digital platform for our master documents. And by that I mean that we've replaced the traditional master stick file for P&IDs, AFDs and PFDs, process flow diagrams, with electronic masters. And because of the global aspect to many of Jacob's projects, the use of electronic masters has made huge improvements to collaboration throughout design and also throughout construction, as contractors and clients can access master files as they can be stored easily within a secure cloud location. Electronic masters have almost eliminated scanning of master documents to communicate the latest changes, which we've found has also made an improvement on workflow efficiency. We're also now indicating isometric issue status within layers on the electronic master on certain projects, and we're finding this to be very helpful. And other ways in which this could bring enhancements are system boundaries and process routes could also similarly be shown within layers on the master document, which can provide important information to engineering, the construction, and also the client. We're also using digital platform for making P&ID changes, and so proof changes are now being marked electronically on P&IDs rather than the traditional paper-based approach. And there are good benefits to the change control process because of the clarity of comments, providing full traceability of who and when the comments have been made. And this also increases collaboration, as now all disciplines can review the latest changes. Okay, I'm going to go back to the value stream map. Okay, so earlier on we looked at the as was state when of the value stream map for a paper-based system, and as I said earlier on, we reviewed this and identified that there were steps in that process that were non-value add as a result of them being, and we found that those steps were the steps associated with paper. So what you can see on the screen here is a value stream map for the revised process and after implementation of DDM for the vendor review process, document review process. So the red circles show the tasks that have now been eliminated by this review, and those were the ones that were associated with the paper trail. In addition, we managed to reduce one other task from the workflow, which can be shown in yellow. But interestingly, the activities that are circled in blue, so the central activities, can now be those activities now can be performed simultaneously. And what we have found is that this has contributed to the overall reduction in the document review task duration. So what we have been able to demonstrate through this review is that the total work time to perform the document review has reduced from 7.5 hours, which it was on the previous slide, to approximately 6 hours here. And the total task duration has also reduced. But the number of processes has also been simplified and reduced, going from an 18-step task to a 10-step task as well. So if I just look at the pie chart again, the streamlined analysis indicates that by eliminating the non-value add paper-based tasks, more time can now be spent on value-added activities. And this we can see being represented in the pie chart, because the non-value activities has been eliminated to 0 in this instance. So in terms of the savings that has been afforded, what you can see on the screen there is an image of the printer that's located in our document control room in Jacobs in Cork. And I'm quoting our doc controller here. He said that the printer has very limited usage since the introduction of the DDM for vendor document reviews, and you can see that that's sitting idle. And as I suppose, we've also looked at what this DDM has had an impact on actual paper wastage. And what we have been able to do is to compare the total documents that have been printed in the Jacobs Cork office from December 17 to Feb 18, and we've compared that with the same time period from 2015 to 2016, and the results indicated a 23% reduction in the total number of documents that have been printed. And we believe that the DDM has played a part in this reduction. So in summary, the example of the vendor document shows how we've used lean methods and techniques to eliminate waste and non-value added activities in some of the key paper-based activities. And this has resulted in time savings and an overall reduction in the paper usage within the office. So I think now we can open it up to any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Liz. That was really interesting. I really like that. I think also digital and lean, they're complementary to each other. So Liz, the first question I have to you is, clearly you used a lot of value stream mapping and Kaizen, and the question is, do you think this type of analysis is limited to engineering document, or could you apply it to other parts of your business?
Okay, thanks, Gary. So I think that the work that we do in an engineering office is very much transactional based. And so the idea of performing value stream mapping can apply to many of the processes that are performed in an engineering office, and not just specifically on, engineering, but if you even apply it to across procurement, across document control, across other functions as well. It's a really good starting point to perform a value stream map when you're looking at many processes that are performed within, an engineering firm such as Jacobs.
Okay, very good. I thought one of the standout parts of the analysis was obviously the 23% to 0% reduction on the paper admin. So Liz, if people are going to jump in and take this approach, is it time consuming, or how long does it take to get this type of analysis?
So in order to make the analysis worthwhile, I think the best approach is to get together in a team to really delve down into the detail of understanding the various workflow elements. And so I suppose to answer the question, does it take long? First of all, it can't, I don't think, be done by one person in isolation. So it does require, a team approach to really understand where the time is being spent and to understand the complexity of the tasks. And so it's not quick, but I don't think at the same time that it takes, it just takes a focused amount of people to focus on the task in hand. If I look back to this example where we looked at the simple vendor document review process, in terms of establishing the work tasks and the task durations and then the overall duration, I think this would have taken in the region of 2 weeks to perform from the very start to actually gathering people together to the final breakdown of the tasks and the compilation of the data.
And Liz, just following on that, when you get all this data analysed, the results or the findings, are they exactly what you expect, or are there surprising facts littered all over it, or when you look at it at the end, you know, are you surprised at what you see?
I suppose not. In a way, not really. Okay. But I think, for example, if you look at that workflow, what to me it's indicated is that there are other opportunities to make improvements for the entire workflow. So, for example, if you were to look at the workflow duration, there are other opportunities that have been thrown up as a result of doing the value stream map that could actually, you know, if we were to look at them in further detail, bring further improvements to that process. But I suppose a certain element of the results were, you know, are not surprising when you look at it, but it's very helpful always just to map the process so that you're looking at what the current state is. It's very clear once you do that to look at, first of all, where the improvements are, task duration, and then, yeah, it does throw up a few surprises sometimes.
Okay, very good. I have a third question here. What projects have you used the digital document platform on?
So we're moving towards using the digital document platform on all of the projects that are executed out of the office in Jacobs. And so if I give some examples of a large biotech facility that we're a project that we're executing in Dublin is using the digital document management in all of the ways that I've actually described in the presentation today. So vendor document reviews, P&ID, master P&IDs, master change controls, and also the layering within the P&IDs itself. And then if I look back to some of the existing projects that we have in the office, we're also at the stage where we may have used a typical paper-based process, maybe clients that we have a sustained relationship with, that we're now at the process of convincing them that moving to this method is giving them inefficiencies and giving them good value.
Okay, very good. A fourth question. So just heads up, some of the questions are now focusing on the technology. So not my forte, but here we go. So do you use any proprietary software?
Okay, that's a good question. So I suppose when we looked at when we made the decision that we were going to go into a digital space, we performed a review of the proprietary softwares that are available, and looking at what each of these offered, and the best fit that we found for Jacobs was software called Bluebeam.
Okay, very good. So Bluebeam was what you ran with.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a software that is available to anybody really to purchase, but it provides some really interesting applications. And so, for example, the sessions, which allows the collaborative documentation review, is one of these. But Bluebeam is also moving into the realm of construction and offers some really interesting features that I think could change the way in which we perform construction work in the future.
Okay, very good. Now there's a technical one, and I'll hopefully I'll translate or explain it clearly. The question is about parallel reviews. So how are contradictory comments mitigated? Okay. So I think what we're talking about here is, as multiple people are collaborating on documents, do we have the capability to accommodate that?
Yeah, so I think if I so the document review process is available to all reviewers to comment on the document simultaneously. And at the end of that review period, and this could actually even be during it, the requisition engineer or the person who's responsible for the document needs to then consolidate those comments. Now, one of the things that I didn't mention during the presentation, but I think it's very important, is that if I were to review a document and it was shared with, say, yourself, Gary, you wouldn't be able to edit my comments and I wouldn't be able to edit your comments. So there's no way that you can kind of lose any information. But when the review process finishes, the person who has ownership of the document then undergoes an exercise of consolidating those comments. And that has to be based on, I suppose, a typical approach of actually talking to people. But at that stage, the document owner you know, can finalise any of the comments that have been placed onto the document before it's submitted to the vendor or the construction team. So.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Liz. I think that was a technically challenging question. I have a fifth question here. It's actually sector related, and I think the question is, if the construction industry is relatively new to lean, you've got 15 plus years experience from life sciences with global multinationals. What lean concepts did you see in that sector that you believe have most potential in the construction sector? So really, what can we learn from sectors that are ahead of us on the lean curve?
Okay, I suppose if I look back to the days that I worked in a manufacturing environment, okay, we spent a huge amount of time actually collecting data and then analysing the data, we and so, for example, what I think is really is a lot of the things that we focused on within a manufacturing context were eliminating defects, okay? And so a lot of information on data was collected around processes that generated defects. So if I kind of talk about the manufacturing context, that might have been in a filling line, for example, the number of vials that you know, were rejected, and that being a defect. But the whole concepts were about understanding the number of defects that a process you know, had inherent with it, and then controlling the inputs in order to be able to reduce and eliminate the defects. And I think that that approach, that strategy, that understanding about defects is something that can be taken into the construction environment. And so if you were to look at any type of engineering firm, the number of defects, as in you know, incorrect documents, incorrect information, then you can hone in on the inputs that have resulted in causing those defects. And once you can control your inputs, you have an ability to reduce your number of defects, reduce your variation. What I've just described is kind of the Six Sigma approach that often client sites would be using. And I think that that idea about, you know, minimizing variation in order to reduce the number of defects can carry into a construction environment, but rather than talking about, you know, vials on a filling line, probably talking more about, you know, mistakes on documents and that level of detail when we're talking about defects. Susan, have we lost Gary?
Yeah, I think there seems to be.
Sorry,
He's
excuse
back
me
now.
there. I was. Yeah, sorry, apologies. Yeah, so following on from that, Liz, Robbie Fairclough has a question, and it's how did the overall duration reduce by 2 days? He picked up on the 23% non-value added.
Okay.
To zero.
So specifically, that has been attributed to the ability to review our document simultaneously. So we're no longer in a situation where we have to pass a document from desk to desk to desk in order to perform the entire review. And when we mapped out the as was and as is process, the data showed that there was a time reduction of approximately 2 days as a result of that simultaneous review.
Okay, very good. So I have one, just I want to acknowledge also the tech questions came from Demetrius Zacharopoulos. So thank you, Demetrius. Paul Kerwin has a question, and it's probably a change or a people question. Did you find there were barriers to moving to a technology solution rather than the traditional paper approach? So what barriers were you faced with, and how did you overcome them in Jacobs?
So the barriers that actually, I actually have found that there have been very few barriers to this. A few of the people may have needed some convincing, but I think that once you know, people realize the benefits and believe the value themselves, that, you know, they have moved towards this digital platform quite quickly. Now, I suppose I suppose training may have also been not a barrier, but a concern that people may have had, which we've managed to, you know, overcome by performing training sessions locally within the office.
Okay, very good. So I think that's there's anybody else have any further questions? Because I think we've covered about 6 or 7, and my queue is complete. Okay, so I think, look, I think we're going to close off the the questions now. So look, just on behalf of Lean Construction Ireland, I'd like to just really thank Liz for putting the case study together and sharing it with us. I think there's a huge amount of work involved in this, and I think it reflects very good on lean thinking when people are open to sharing their ideas. Anybody who is listening today, that offer is extended to you. If you think you have a case study that you'd like to share, you know, please make contact with us. Now, just before we hand over, I'm going to pass you back to Susan.
Thanks, Gary. I'd like to thank everyone for attending the webinar. The next webinar will take place on the 25th of April, and information on that will be sent out in the coming days, and you can register for that. Once again, thank you to Liz and to Gary for today's webinar, and we look forward to hearing from you again in April. Thank you.